Welcome back to the series, Name Yod-He-Uhe to Claim Yahuwah, helping others to learn, love, and use the name of the Creator of the universe. And we are looking at Kabbalah, Freemasons, and the KJV. At some point we'll get to the Freemasons and the KJV, but we're still in part 5G.
Gee whiz.
Gee, this is taking a long time. So here we are on our website, yahuwahsoasis.com. When the PDF that has all of the information in one space, which is now cruising into about 500 pages, you will find...
Oh, goody, that'll mean it will be at the end of the alphabet.
Yeah, it'll be right here. However, if you want to have the PDF that goes along with this webinar right here, you want to come to the second one, and that's this one right here where it says PDFs to videos. If you'd also like to get a free bracelet, all you'd have to do is come down and click the Contact Us and provide us with your mailing address, and we'd be happy to mail that out for you for free. Then to get back up onto our Vimeo site, this is what you'll see, just so that you know. And you can always check us out on YouTube, the Cedar and Sage site, where you'll see our praise music to Yahuwah. We also have the lyrics on our page as well. So here we are. Part 5G.
Well, in this part, we're going to touch on the Babel story, as it is very important in regards to how the mystery religions flourished throughout history and continue to flourish. And we'll be picking up on the real thing on page 193 if that ever comes to fruition.
Which it will.
In regards to Babel, the proof in the pudding, so to speak, was that it was most of the tribes of Ham's son that had one mind set to become established to do one purpose. They are the poster children for Babylon in fact and future analogies, to do the will of Shaitan and continue the war that he started in the garden. Shaitan dangles the promise to men that they can be a deity, and every time humans fall for it. It is not accurate to think the whole earth was involved with the Babel fiasco. However, most felt the consequences of it. Most of Shem's side would have no part in it. Shem, whose name, character, and reputation would retain the Hebrew language with variations, for example, Aramaic. Japheth's family, again, not all bad, but some of them to this very day are extremely evil. We have always understood the root of evil. Shaitan is the root and the vine on which his rebellion is spread. However, where it appears to be most concentrated in human is in Ham and Japheth's line. We cannot lump all peoples together under one heading.
It's very misleading when we do that. Nimrod, however, was the one who had the tower built and was of Ham's line. All of this clan had the rebellious intent. They were carrying out the evil masonry work of building the tower. Remember, Enoch had written down everything for them, so they had to even up the sides. Cain's family died in the flood, but Ham's and Japheth's side seems to have picked up where Cain's side left off. This could be why there's so many ancient gods and myths. Once they were confused and spread out, they splintered off and created other versions for their languages, each thinking it to be superior to all others. According to Wikipedia and Scripture, Ham was one of the sons of Noah who moved southwest, modern compass direction, into Africa and parts of adjoining areas of Asia, and was the forefather of the nations there. The Scriptures refer to Egypt as the land of Ham in the Psalms and First Chronicles. In Jubilees, this curse of Canaan by Noah was likely connected to the conquest of Canaan by Israel. Both the conquest of Canaan and the curse, according to the book of Jubilees 10:29-34, are attributed rather to Canan's steadfast refusal to join his elder brothers in Ham's allotment beyond the Nile, and instead squatting within the inheritance of Shem on the eastern shores of the Mediterranean, in the region later promised to Abraham.
Now, this is which we've seen this earlier, the genealogical chart
Just as a reminder.
as a reminder, but this is the real chart. This is not the goofy chart that we've been. Okay, good. The chronological scheme of Jubilees has Ham born in the year 1209, and this is in the Jewish time. 2 years after Shem, 3 before Japheth, and 99 before the flood. It gives the name of his wife, who also survived the flood, as Nael Tamauk, and after his youngest son Canaan was cursed. He left Mount Ararat and built a city named for his wife on the south side of the mountains. And then later on, he received a third of the division of the earth along with his 2 brothers for his inheritance, everything west of the Nile River and to the south of Gadir. Now, when the nations were scattered following the failure of the Tower of Babel, Ham and his children journeyed to their allotment, with the exception of Canaan, who settled in Shem's territory, thus receiving another curse.
And
didn't learn the first time.
Right, and as you see, those are mostly all the ites that we always get, the big list of.
Yeah.
So here's another look.
Look.
And here's where they're talking about Canaan. So he settled in here, and here's all the ites.
All of his children.
Here's Japheth's kids were up in here in the orange, and then Shem's is in the green, and then the rest of Ham's lines moved out down to where they should have been, it looks like.
Finally.
Here's another really old map that shows that, where the red, yellow, and blue suns, just in case you
Sons
wanted
of
to
each
see
of
them.
the boys.
Remember, Yah is looking specifically at Ham's line at Babel. All the tribes of Noah did not live in Babel. Yah wanted to confuse Ham's language so they would not take their evil too far and too fast. And Yah did not want the righteous ones, to understand the nonsense that was being promoted. So it was in everyone's best interest to mix up the language and scatter them. Ham's line, as we see in history, really stands out in their acceptance of Shaitan's promises of power, money, and to be godlike. The reemergence of giants came through them. They were of one accord, one mind. They wanted to be like a deity higher than Yahuwah. They could understand each other's languages. It was not a barrier, but after the confusion, they could no longer be multilingual unless they went about to specifically learn another language. And Acts at Shabuah, you see where the people understood each other as if they were speaking in their own language. They had become multilingual again, a gift of the Ruach, set-apart spirit, so they could go out and spread the Torah and tell of the prophecy fulfilled. We can see that this evil secret teaching of the mysteries has deep roots in the Middle East and became entrenched in the rabbinic, Babylonian, Egyptian, Greek, Mayan, to name a few cultures. In later years, it evolved and still goes hand in hand with the Freemasons, the Illuminati, and all Luciferian cults. They are really one and the same, the language of the secret mysteries. Similar rituals, deities, and endgame is a language of absolute commitment to the adversary. It's all about secrecy. Another interesting note in the Hebrew word Babel from Parkhurst's Hebrew lexicon, page 46 and 47, is to mix and mingle. So not only was it to confuse and confound, it was also, and also don't forget the Bel was in there as well, which is that god of the Babylonians, which they like to make gods of all of the heavens and fire and spirit and all the elements.
Molech kind of
But
things.
it was to mix in and mingle. So you're mixing in stuff that they already had and mingling it with other things. And that's why you see that they have a kind of a foundation where it all kind of sounds the same, but they attributed different things to it. Or you have letters that kind of look the same, but maybe they have a different sound for that character. So you're mixing and mingling. And so we'll let you go through and read this too as well. It's just more information for it, but I really wanted to get you in for the description of the temple, of which there's no other than the famous Tower of Babel, is to mix and mingle together. That's what causes the confusion. And here you have the Temple of Jupiter, which is the same thing as the Tower of Babel.
in later years.
In later years. Now, when you sit there and you look at this, and you look at Babel, or Babeli, I guess, in Aramaic,
Babel.
you see the confusion here, and you can see the confusion. So in either way, of Aramaic or in regular Hebrew, you still get that confusion.
Now, from C.J. Coster's book, Come Out of Her, My People, he has this to say. Baal, Bel, Babylon are all interrelated words pertaining to the chief sun deities of pagan sun worship. Baal means to shine, also used for lord or husband. Bel is another name for Satan. Babylon was the ancient Canaanite city where sun worship began, and from there spread to all the ancient cults and current of the world, and remains in the world today as the counterfeit religion of Satan under the guise of the Roman Catholic Church and its offshoot religions, or daughters, which include Christianity. We see here that the confusion was the mixing of the languages. That would be the reason why they can trace the Hebrew through so many of our languages today. These were not altogether brand new. It was a mixture of what was there, Hebrew with new added in. Isn't it interesting that Bible, which in Hebrew would be spelled the same way, Babel, Bet, Lamed, the confusion that is sprinkled in most likely came from the Babylonian-inspired Kabbalah and Talmud. The square Hebrew letters are said to have come from Ezra, who rewrote the scrolls he found, and he came out of Babylon.
And most people will say, yes, the Bible's very confusing.
Very, of course.
The word Bible comes from the Greek word biblos, which is translated book. C.J. Coster also has this to say, and Come Out of Her, My People, about the word Bible, and it's not good. Bible comes from the Greek word biblos, or Babylon, which refers to the Egyptian papyrus reed, which the Greeks called biblos or bibelus. The papyrus reed was shipped from the Egyptian city Byblos, named after its female sun deity. We just can't get away from that. It was imported through the Greek seaport called Byblos, named after its Phoenician sun deity Byblos or Byblos, Byblis or Byblos, believed to be the granddaughter of Apollo, the Greek sun deity. Note the word Bible was first used in 400 A.D., which is really quite late. So you've got everybody's sun deity with their little hand in the pocket for there. So using the name of a sun goddess that has ties to the city of confusion, and also a title for Satan for your holy Bible, what possible message could they have been sending?
Certainly not by pigeon. And just to add fuel to this fire, C.J. Coster also had this to say about the word holy. Holy, holiday, Holy Spirit are all interrelated and come from the Hindu religion. The words are derived from Holi, which is the great Hindu spring festival held in honor of Krishna, the Hindu sun god.
And I believe that's the festival where they sprinkle everybody with dye,
Yes.
and they walk through, and it's just like just a mess.
So Willie will stick to using Tanakh, Torah, and the eyewitness accounts. Scriptures would be fine as well. When you see written languages such as cuneiform, which we've learned is the proper pronunciation, it brings to mind the nature of the mystery religion itself. Cuneiform, as we will see, is not a language, and it is not easily deciphered. It's just a bunch of sticks. Isn't it the whole purpose of written symbols to convey meanings to others? The difficulty of this suggests that there could be a more secretive hidden agenda, especially in the area it was developed, particularly with sticks.
Exactly.
Rocks.
Cuneiform, 6 things you probably didn't know about the world's oldest writing system.
They think.
Well, it's of the stick type anyway, distinguished by its wedged-shaped marks on clay tablets. Cuneiform script is of the oldest form of writing in the world, but it's not an alphabet. First appearing on even earlier than Egyptian hieroglyphics, and this was back in 2015, and that's a little example of what it looks like. Cuneiform is a writing system. It is not a language. It is also not an alphabet, and it doesn't have letters. Instead, it used between 600 and 1,000 characters to write words or parts of them, or syllables or parts of them. The two main languages written in cuneiform are Sumerian and Akkadian, both ancient Iraq, can you say Babylon? Although more than a dozen others are recorded. This means we could use it equally well today to spell Chinese, Hungarian, or English. So if you want to figure out a way to send a spy message, just learn
using stick figures.
cuneiform.
And they said it was around 3400 BC. The first stage used elementary pictures that were soon also used to record sounds. Okay. Cuneiform probably preceded Egyptian hieroglyphic writing because we know of early Mesopotamian experiments and dead ends as the established script developed, including the beginning of signs and numbers, whereas the hieroglyphic system seems to have been born more or less perfectly formed and ready to go. Almost certainly Egyptian writing evolved from cuneiform. Wrong. It couldn't have been an on-the-spot invention. It borrowed heavily from pictographic Hebrew because one of Noah's grandson, Mitzrayim, Egypt, would have known that script. What do you think looks more similar?
Which do you think looks more similar? So in other words, which letters do you think look very similar? Mm-hmm. So you've got like the foot and the gimel.
Yeah, you got the C.
You got the H. But see, this is what I'm talking about as far as mixing and mingling.
Yep.
This looks like the bet.
Right.
But in Egypt, it's the H.
Right.
This looks like the shepherd's staff, but it's the C. Here you have the hay that we've seen, but no, it's their D. So, then here's the mem.
The C and the S are interesting. You color in one.
Yeah, exactly. Which one you want. So
exactly.
there's a little, here's the IN.
Yeah.
But to them, it's the R.
Right.
So you're mixing and matching. You use this, you use that, and
I'll make up my own thing.
I have no idea of what you're talking about.
Exactly.
So this is, again, Ham's son is Mitzrayim, who is Egypt. His uncle is Shem. His grandfather is Noah. It is not impossible.
It is impossible.
It is impossible. He did not know Hebrew. So here we have it again, a little bit more photographic.
Well, get that in your mind so you can go out and interpret the hieroglyphics when you're over in Egypt.
Yes, there you go.
See that,
which is really quite weird when they do that. So here you have the cuneiform, and this is what they're saying. It started off in pictograph. And then it kind of came down to a little bit more kind of a mixture, and then it came into purely sticks. And here you see an example of this. But again, you're seeing this is the ox head, this is the mem, and here's the leg. And if they had, this could be like the resh, but it's the whole body, but it's a shrouded body. So, on that side of it, and here's the bowl, which is they have a bowl, they have a basket. And this can't be every letter either. So, and then it just, went down. But what I'm saying is, so who came first? Who borrowed from whom?
Amazingly, cuneiform continued to be used until the 1st century AD, meaning that the distance and time that separates us from the latest surviving cuneiform tablet is only just over half of that which separates that tablet from the first one. All you needed to write cuneiform was a reed and some clay, both of which were freely available in the rivers alongside the Mesopotamian cities where cuneiform was used, which is now Iraq and eastern Syria. The word cuneiform comes from Latin. Okay, so why would we they must have called it something else.
Exactly.
They didn't have Latin back then.
No, they didn't.
Which means wedge, and simply, not a wedgie, and simply means wedge-shaped. It refers to the shape made each time a scribe passed or pressed his stylus, made from a specially cut reed, into the clay. Cuneiform looks somewhat impossible.
That's number 4. I put that in big bold.
Number 1.
Yeah, give me a reading on that, would you?
Right.
Those who read cuneiform for a living, and there are a few, like to think of it as the world's most difficult writing or the most inconvenient. However, if you have 6 years to spare and work around the clock, not pausing for meals, it's a doodle to master. All you have to do is learn the extinct languages recorded by their tablets, then thousands of signs, many of which have more than one meaning or sound. 2044 BC, Sumeria, ancient Iraq, the third clay administrative tablet, that's what this is, impressed with a scribe seal, which depicts a goddess leading a worshiper to the text.
And the text.
And the text, Giger, scribe, son of Baran. The main text on the reverse, which is pictured, lists plowmen employed by the state with the quantities of land assigned to them as wages. I got that when I first immediately saw that.
I knew it was a wage. It was a paycheck.
I mean, seriously.
This is your statement.
It's just a ledger.
There you go.
Really, this is the first payroll ledger.
There you go.
So here's another. This is from ancientscripts.com, and what they say, it's very deceptive in that it tricks people into thinking it's some kind of writing system. The truth is that cuneiform denotes not one but several kinds of writing systems, including logosymbolic.
No, that's logosyllabic.
Well,
that's syllable, syllabic, and alphabetic scripts. There's not a syllable in there to be seen.
In fact, cuneiform came from, we saw that. Yeah. So therefore, any script can be called cuneiform as long as individual signs are composed of wedges. Okay, including Semitic, so that's important to remember.
I can make wedges. So you have the clay tokens, which were the precursors of cuneiform. The earliest examples of Mesopotamian script date from approximately the end of the 4th millennium BCE, coinciding in time and geography with the rise of urban centers such as Uruk, Nippur, Susa, and Ur. These early records are used almost exclusively for accounting and record keeping. Cuneiform records are really descendants of another counting system that had been used for 5,000 years. Clay tokens have been used since as early as 8,000 BCE in Mesopotamia for some form of record keeping. And what I'd like to mention here, that I'm not quite sure how they found anything from 8,000 years ago.
Oh, just whatever.
Yeah, clay. They would have melted in the water. Clay tokens are big.
I will say this. If that was really true, the Sphinx would have been, because the Sphinx is made out of limestone.
The Sphinx was after the flood.
I'm just saying, but it has been through torrential rains. It has been through a lot of different things. So they're a little bit more sturdy than what you think.
No. That's not the same thing. That is not the same thing as the flood, the reason for the flood. And that's why, if you'll remember.
Well, maybe submerged for a year.
Yeah, we're talking the flood. This here, that's not that. Clay tokens are basically three-dimension geometrical shapes. These are two types of clay tokens, plain and complex. The plain tokens are the oldest one. Again, back in 8,000 BCE, which is impossible. Turkey, Syria, Israel, Jordan, Iraq, and Iran, all settlements of all sizes. Now this chick, Denise Schmant-Bezerat, theorized that both are used for record keeping, in particular the plain tokens, given their long time span and their widespread use, most likely counted agricultural items like grain or cereal. In fact, one of the earliest examples of complex tokens was found in the temple of Inanna, the Sumerian goddess of love and fertility, in the city of Uruk. This implies that the temple institution used clay tokens to record goods manufactured for the temple.
So just in case you forgot who the Sumerian and the Akkadians were, we're right back to Inky, Blinky, and Nod. So just wanted to remind you why she's having an issue with the 8,000 BC.
Well, again,
and I don't blame her.
Well, no, but we've already did that because we, as you will come to find out, there was something that's no longer there.
Exactly.
Because of the flood.
So remember this from the Michigan archaeological finds. Interesting that in ancient America we have cuneiform and depictions of the Tower of Babel recorded. So
I guess it should be towel.
Towel. Oh, I spelled it. The Tower of Babel.
That's probably,
I was confused. I was Babel.
Closer.
So now, April 28th, 2017, new evidence suggests ancient Tower of Babel, spelled correctly, was real. The story of the Tower of Babel is a cryptic account in Genesis 11, 1 through 9, of a time when everyone on earth spoke the same language. As people migrated east, they settled in the land of Shinar, a general region of ancient Mesopotamia. Note, ancient Mesopotamia, widely considered to be one of the cradles of human civilization, was situated within the Tigris-Euphrates river system in modern days, roughly corresponding to most of Iraq plus Kuwait and eastern parts of Syria, southeastern Turkey, and regions along the Turkish, Syrian, and Iraq-Iran borders. There in Shinar, the people agreed to build a city, a tower tall enough to reach the heaven, to make a name for themselves. Angered by their hubris, Yahuwah confounded their speech so they would no longer understand each other and scattered them about the world. The people stopped building the city, which they called Babel, or in Greek, Babylon. According to the book of Genesis, King Nimrod was the original founder of Babel and the great-grandson of Noah. The remains of Babylon in the present-day Hilla, Iraq, about 53 miles south of Baghdad, comprising a large tell of broken and mud brick buildings and debris, as well as a number of mounds covering an area about 1.24 miles by 0.62 miles. A recently aired documentary on the Smithsonian Channel gives compelling evidence for the Tower of Babel may have been real. And of course it is. And here we have a little picture down there and make it a little bit easier. But
if you could ever go journey there.
Yeah, go ahead and check that out on YouTube. But this is interesting because this is actually a picture of where they're saying that this is. So we're looking at actually what they're finding in the ruins. I thought that was interesting.
The discovery of vast structure beneath the remains of Babylon, a privately owned stone tablet dating back to the 6th century BC, which was discovered in Babylon about 100 years ago. The tablet's significance recently was uncovered by Dr. Andrew George, professor of Babylonian at the School of Oriental and African Studies in the University of London, inscribed into the tablet on the bas-reliefs of the ancient Mesopotamian step tower and the figure of King Nebuchadnezzar II, 604 to 561 BC, as well as the text, The Secret Totemic Tower of the City of Babylon, and an account identical to that in Genesis of how the tower was constructed.
So there you go. That's interesting. This is from the video, and they just kind of outlined it a little bit better so you could see what it was. But that pretty much looks like Babylon to me. By the way, why does the European Parliament building in Strasbourg, France, look so much like the painting of the Tower of Babel by the 16th century painter
Pieter Bruegel
the Elder? I don't know. It would take very little for the reader to find all the connections of Shaitan to Kabbalah, Baal, Islam, alien astronaut, all the mystery religions, Druid, Knights of the Templar, Rosicrucian, Freemason, and all occult worship. All of these groups are in direct opposition to what the Torah and Scriptures teach, so they cannot be in line with the true Almighty and His Son. They can, however, be useful to see where some of the bodies are buried, so to speak.
Kabbalistic information. One of the most important names is that of the Ein Sof, or void, infinite, or endless. The 42-lettered name contains the combined names of all of that, then when spelled out contains 42 letters, and this is the equivalent in value of Yod-He-Uhe, or Yahuwah. Really?
Yes. So
that's just the 40, and you can just, read all of this. So they had to come up with a word with 42 letters to do numerology to Yahuwah. Obviously, this has nothing to do with what the Torah teaches.
Yeah, Yahuwah clearly stated His name, and it didn't have 42 letters in it.
No,
even though they're trying to use Exodus.
Right.
Yeah.
I think they just, whatever. The word Kabbalah is interesting in the propaganda they spend. They say it means revealed, as in secret knowledge. It must have been a huge secret because that word for any type of knowledge is not used in Scripture, not even once. Just the sound of it evokes or invokes naughty images. Ka, ba, ah, Allah. Look at Ka from Parkus on page 454.
I'm just saying, Allah.
Yeah.
Kabbalah, Allah. Kabbalah, Allah. So, Ka is to vomit or spew out vomited information. So I would say if you're completely confused and if you're spewing out vomit, according to Yahuwah anyway, right?
Bala, rising to wear out, harass constantly. H1080 is pronounced Bala according to Blue Letter Bible.
So if you're putting ka and bala together,
there you go. Even more so. To wear away.
The closest word we have is H6905.
6905.
6905. That is the sound cabal. And it is used as it being the sense of opposite of. Right. It is used once in 2 Kings 15:10, means simply before or something that's in front of. Also interesting, siege engine or battering ram. Now we can see that why they say that this is information that came before, but that really is a stretch.
As usual.
So here we have Babel or Babel. The H6904 has the same meaning but more specific. With the vowel points, this could be Kubal, not Kabal. This is really interesting, though, in the sense of confronting as standing opposite in order to receive. Do you have to stand opposite of Yahuwah like a battering ram in order to receive the Torah? No, that's not how he works. So this must be something quite different. So here we have the word that means to receive actually is H6901 in the family of words, but is a primitive root, and it's pronounced kabel, not cabal. The Aramaic 6902 sounds and means the same. And if you go up to Blue Letter Bible, just click on this little thing right here, and you will hear the person pronouncing it for you, although he will pronounce it with the V and not with the B. So here is something we put forth with just logic as our basis. There is no scripture word meaning Kabbalah. There is a family of words that means to receive and show oppositeness, standing in opposition of. Kabel, Kabal, and Kabel. We see a correlation to Kabbalah. Do you see it? This could be just as easily part of a word being put together that means to invoke a curse. So here you have kab, to curse, utter a curse, and then Allah is the
double
curse.
Whammy, apparently.
Exactly. So that even is pretty naughty, right? And it's the sound Islamic terrorists wail and lament right before they strike. And interesting, Allah means to lament and wail. So this is our uneducated definition of the word Kabbalah: to vomit and spew out curses from before that stands in opposition to Yah, that was received, to wear out and harass and cause wailing and lamenting, obviously, for the people that it's spewed on.
Exactly.
Obviously nothing good.
Now, Kabbalists and this Kabbalah with the 7,000 H's added to it is from the Theosophical division of this mystery myth. Now, this person goes into a little more detail.
Rick Ross, which is this guy right here.
Okay, Rick Ross. Well, we've left that in the PDF because we really don't want to get into it too much. So, this is an unwritten or oral tradition. The Kabbalist is a student of secret science.
And we're just going to call it Cab. Because it's just like, I don't even want to say Allah as much as they say it.
One who interprets the hidden meaning of the scriptures with the help of the symbolic Cab and explains the real one by this means. The Tannanim were the first Cabs among the Jews. They appeared at Jerusalem about the beginning of the 3rd century before the Christian era. Now, they're saying the books of Ezekiel, Daniel, Enoch, and the Revelation of St. John, or we like to call him just John, are purely Cab, and that's purely wrong. Now, if they really thought this about the books listed, they should stop being in the Cabs, as their end is clearly predicted. Seriously, there is nothing in any of the scriptures that remotely prove that the above listed books are Cabs.
This secret doctrine is identical with that of the Chaldeans, which includes at the same time much of the Persian wisdom or magic. History catches glimpses of famous Cabs ever since the 11th century. The medieval ages, or even our own times, have had an enormous number of the most learned and intellectual men who were students of the Cab. as everybody pronounces it and spells it differently. The most famous among them are all of these people. I think this guy was interesting. There was one that was a Jesuit. And, of course, they're talking about Sir Isaac Newton, and you have a pope up here as well. But this is a complete lie because Isaac Newton spent a lot of time debunking the Kabbalah. And so we'll show you that, just a little bit of that, and when we get towards the end of this, but he was very anti. So how could Cabs have the same secret doctrine as the Chaldeans when they believed in idols of stone and wood?
They just perfected it, apparently.
Yeah, not sure, because the main thrust of what Kabbalah is the fact that if it's the true Kabbalah, it's all spirit-minded. Right. Has nothing to do with the material.
Oh, that's the
so
same
if you've got a
demon possession.
Well, but if you've got a god made of stone and wood, that's not so much spirit.
No. Chaldea is the southern portion of Babylonia, lower Mesopotamia, lying chiefly on the right bank of the Euphrates, but commonly used at the whole of the Mesopotamian plain. The Hebrew name is Kasdim, which is usually rendered Chaldeans, and you can see that in Jeremiah.
And here's right here.
And that's also where Abraham came out of. Recent discoveries, more especially in Babylonia, have thrown much light on the history of the Hebrew patriarchs and have illustrated or confirmed the biblical narrative in many points. The ancestor of the Hebrew people, Abraham, or Abram, was, we are told, born at Ur of the Chaldees. Chaldees is a mistranslation of the Hebrew Kasdim, Kasdim being the Old Testament name of the Babylonians, while the Chaldees were a tribe who lived on the shores of the Persian Gulf and did not become a part of the Babylonian population until the time of Hezekiah. Ur was one of the oldest and most famous of the Babylonian cities.
Now those two guys, and Spinoza is one of the Hebrews that was responsible for taking a lot of things into Spain.
He's a Spanish guy, yeah.
I forget which is the sect of the Jews that he was more into.
Oh, Sephardic.
Sephardic, thank you.
Yes.
The list being almost exhaustible.
Inexhaustible.
Well, it is exhaustible. It's exhausting
to you, but
it
it's inexhaustible to them.
Now, upon the practical Kabbalah, these guys, 1670, published a celebrated satirical novel, which the Pope based his Rape of the Lock. So Cab ran through the medieval poems, a romance of the Rose. Now the Rose, Rosicrucian, permeates the writings of Dante. No two of them, however, agree on the origin of Cab. The Zohar, Sefer Yetzirah, etc. Some show it's coming from the biblical patriarchs, Abraham, and even Seth. Yikes, no way. Others from Egypt, others from Chaldea. The system is certainly very old. Yes, from the fallen ones. Thank you very much. But like all the rest of the systems, whether religious or philosophical, the Cab is derived directly from the primeval secret doctrine of the East. Through the Vedas, so now we're back to being the Hindus, these guys...
That's just a guy. Pythagoras.
And the Egyptians. But whatever its source, its substratum is at any rate identical with that of all the other systems from the Book of the Dead down to the later Gnostics. The best exponents of the Cab in the Theosophical Society, Helen Blavatsky, were among the earliest. Dr. S. Pancoast of Philadelphia and Mr. G. Felt, and then later Dr. W. Wynne Westcott. I meant to look that up to see if that was Westcott and Hort, because I know that he was really into magic as well. So anyway, and then these guys had the Rosicrucian College and a few others. That would be good going to a Rosicrucian College.
Theosophy refers to a system of esoteric philosophy concerning or seeking direct knowledge of presumed mysteries of being and nature, particularly concerning the nature of divinity. Theosophy is considered a part of a broader field of esotericism, referring to hidden knowledge or wisdom that offers the individual enlightenment and salvation.
And then there's also spiritual ecstasy. Yeah,
yes,
that's
that sounds like the snake charmers.
Well, here we have the snake.
The snake.
And if you see this, I just learned this the
swastika?
other day, the swastika, this is their symbol for the Samek, which is actually in the theosophy, is their symbol for their almighty deity.
Not the Ankh and everything else?
No.
Now, what would a satanic symbol be without the snake, right? An obvious warning again, be careful of the medical profession. The cabs. The hidden wisdom of the Hebrew rabbis of the Middle Ages derived from the older secret doctrines concerning divine things, and that word,
Cosmology.
cosmogony, what the Watchers taught,
See,
which were combined into a theology after the time of the captivity of the Jews in Babylon. All the works that fall under the esoteric category are termed cabs.
The Theosophists, I'm going to just call it Theo, of the Middle Ages drew their occult knowledge from two streams of thought, which long before had sprung from a common source. One of these streams was the Hermetic philosophy, the other was the cab. Our modern dictionaries, the cab is defined as the mystic theosophy of the Hebrews. The prominent cab writers, Dr. Christian D. Ginsburg, speaks of it as a system of religious philosophy or theosophy, which not only exercised a powerful influence upon the Jews for hundreds of years, but also captivated the minds of some of the greatest thinkers of Christendom. What is known today as cab is a highly complex system having four distinct divisions. The first, or practical cab, deals principally with ceremonial magic. Remember the 1998 movie Practical Magic? And it was completely about ceremonial magic.
The traditional origin of cab closely resembles the opening sentences of the fourth discourse of the Hindu thing. According to the account, the cab is divine wisdom which was first taught by G to a company of angels. Adam caught glimpses of these truths and passed his vision on to Noah. Noah communicated it unto Abraham, who in turn taught it to the Egyptians. So, they cut out Enoch. Notice it was something Adam got glimpses of in a single vision. Pretty detailed glimpses, don't you think? Notice everything is by chance and secret. Not intentional teaching of wisdom by the source. A single vision expanded into 12 huge sections that make up the cabs. Moshe gained his knowledge in Egypt and passed it on to his 70 elders. From them the cab was transmitted orally until the year AD 80, when some of the teachings were committed to writing. At this point, tradition stops and actual history begins. And from that history, we can complete Krishna's sentence and say,
Everyone's included.
Did Moshe run into Krishna?
Again.
In the course of time, the mighty art was lost.
Yes, because don't forget, they
Yes,
are the ones that have
but they ran into
reincarnation.
Krishna.
Well,
That's
of course,
true.
remember, everybody's
Moshe
back.
taught the 70 elders about cabs. Let us ask these questions. Was that before or after he wrote in the Torah to not do as the Gentile nations and to only follow what was written in the book of the Torah? If it was before, where is the renunciation of the cabs? If it was after, would he not have understood by his own handwriting that this was wrong? This does not hold any water at all. People just want to justify their religions by putting Moshe's name on it, making it seem valid.
Exactly.
I know that Islam uses his name.
So the language used was Senzar, the secret sacerdotal tongue, which preceded Sanskrit and was known to the initiates from the time immemorial.
You sure it wasn't cuneiform?
Oh, no, this is way before that. Among the scriptures drawn from this primeval source were the Chaldean Book of Numbers, the Sefer, whatever that is, and the Sefer Jezariah. These books form the basis of the written cab. The unwritten, secret, or orally transmitted cab belonged to the Chaldees of Magi's, those great Aryan adepts who came to Babylon thousands of years before the Jews settled in that country, who, according to the statement made by one of the
Theosophical Mahatmas.
I just can't say that. I think there's something in my head. Were at the apex of their occult fame before what you term the Bronze Age. Abraham gained his knowledge of the Cab from the Chaldees while he was living in the city of Ur. Moshe acquired his in Egypt when he was the priest of the sun, living in the city of Heliopolis. Oh, come on. As a side note, this Chaldean book of Numbers has only one copy left, and the Vatican supposedly has it. I just wanted you to see this patriarch patriarch of Babylon, and all the interesting little
gizmos
danglies he's got up there.
His scout
So buckle
badges.
up. Here comes the fairy tales. The first person to be initiated by Moshe was his elder brother Aaron, whose name heads the list of initiated Nabiim, or prophets. From that time on, schools of the prophets began to appear in the countries inhabited by the Jews. In these schools, every branch of science was taught, the study of alchemy forming an important part of the curriculum. I cannot talk tonight. They were also schools of the mysteries where the probationers were subjected to the same rigorous form of discipline as the Eastern Chela. Those who had passed through their final initiation were known as the innocents, the infants, or the little ones. Wow. Mix match truth with trash. And I think
there's not much truth in there.
And I think it's interesting if all of the initiates knew how to do alchemy, change gold and from a piece of rock, then why do they need people giving money to the temple?
I'm interested in the schools of the prophets.
Yeah, there you go.
And where did Yahuwah say I got a school for the prophets?
I know. The boys missed their call.
Really, the first Jews to call themselves Cabs were the Tananim, who lived in Jerusalem about the beginning of the 3rd century B.C. 2 centuries later, 3 important Jewish Cabs appeared. And then you have these guys.
Well, read it.
And there was also
the first
Jehoshua ben Pandira, now known as Jesus the Christ. Seriously, who is Pandira? Is that another Hindu Krishna?
No, they're saying that's Yahusha. So that would have been Yahusha ben Joseph.
Yeah. No,
so I don't know who Pandira is. Just asking.
The second was the great Chaldean teacher Hillel. He is speaking of Hillel, the elder, who was born in 110 BCE in Babylon, died 10 CE. He is associated with the development of the Mishnah and the Talmud.
So I think that's probably right.
Third was Philo, in whose writings we find a clear statement of the 3 fundamental propositions of theosophy. He defined G as an ideal, an idea, free of all mixture, devoid of all combination, which pervades everything and fills the entire universe, which absolutely made no sense there, within that unlimited and unnameable principle, he said, is an eternal and immutable law, which is the strong and lasting support of the universe. In regard to man, Philo wrote that man is the noblest of all creatures by reason of the higher element, the soul, which is pure in its essence, the faithful image and copy of the eternal idea.
So basically he's just saying Yahuwah
is just an idea.
No, and it's in everything. It's unnameable. You don't know who it is. It's just everywhere, and it's in everything. But he's
also saying that it's you are a faithful and a copy of an eternal idea.
Mm-hmm. Philo was also heavily influenced by the Greeks, since he was a Hellenized Jew living in Alexandria, Egypt. From Wikipedia, nothing said about Cab. Philo used philosophical allegory to harmonize Jewish scripture, mainly the Torah, with Greek philosophy. His method followed the practices of both Jewish exegesis and Stoic philosophy. You really need to study Stoic philosophy to get a really good idea of what the New Testament is actually saying to you. His allegorical exegesis is important for several Christian church fathers, but he has barely any reception history within Rabbinic Judaism. He believed that literal interpretations of the Hebrew Bible would stifle humanity's perception of God, too complex and marvelous to be understood in literal human terms. So to him, everything is an allegory. And so what you could say is just a little bit the same is that in Cab, they have 7 layers of everything. So you have the literal, and then you just keep going. Deeper, deeper, deeper.
That's not like Masons. You have 32
yes,
layers.
Exactly. Some scholars hold that his concept of the Logos as G's creative principle influenced early Christology. Actually, and that's true because that came from the Stoics. What they say is the Logos, and what we would consider the Logos is not the same. Other scholars deny direct influence, but say that Philo and early Christianity borrowed from a common source. Philo bases his doctrine on the Hebrew Bible, which he considers as the source and standard not only of religious truth, but of all truth, where that would not be true if he was actually in bed with the cab. So he's much more of a Hellenistic Jew.
Now, during the siege of Jerusalem in the year 80 A.D., an adept rabbi, which is nothing more than a cab rabbi, Simon ben Jokai, by name, escaped from the city and hid himself in a cave where he remained for 12 years. After his death, two of his disciples, Rabbi Elazar and Abba, collected some of the manuscripts he had left and compiled them into a book. This was the original Zohar and the ravings of a loon. For the next 1,000 years, the cab was studied in secrecy and silence. But in the 11th century, this rabbi, also known as that person, produced two important cab works. And there you have it. The latter being a superb poem indicating the impersonality of the great principle.
And you don't have to read that.
Yeah, because that's kind of stupid.
But
Emanationism.
I just wanted to see what this is basically what this
is an idea in the cosmology or the cosmogony of certain religious or philosophical systems. Emanation, from the Latin meaning to flow from or to pour forth or out of, is the mode by which all things are derived from the first reality or principle. All things are derived from the first reality or perfect G by steps of degradation to lesser degrees of the first reality or G, and at every step the emanating beings are less pure, less perfect, less divine. Emanationism is a transcendent principle from which everything is derived, and is opposed to both creationism, wherein the universe is created by a sentient G who is separate from creation, and materialism, which posits no underlying subjective and or ontological nature behind phenomenon being eminent.
So it's basically, emanation is like a Xerox copy of a Xerox copy of a Xerox copy, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse as it goes back.
Generation, that's what it's talking about.
And it's your job then to start to try to reverse that to where you then become as great as where you started from. In this is the journey.
Writings of a loon.
Emanation is common teaching found in occult, esoteric, and metaphysical writings, according to Owen, 2005. Theosophy draws on Neoplatonic emanation, in particular the concept of separation from and return to the absolute. So there you have the thing of going around. And reworks of the Eastern concept of karma and reincarnation to provide an evolutionary theory of both humankind and the universe. Theosophy teaches that human beings and all organisms, including animals and all matter, flow from a pure spiritual formation in the absolute to a material one over time to become materialized, but later will return to the absolute after the cosmic cycle of life.
That's just like reincarnation.
As Morgan summarizes, the secret doctrine laid out in an emanationist view of the development of the physical universe, a process of ebb and flow in which spirit gradually unfolded itself into matter, attaining consciousness, here's your pond scum, and returning to spirit in a higher and more realized form. According to the emanationist cosmology of Madame Blavatsky and all monads emerge from the divine unity at the beginning of the cosmic cycle and return to the source at its close. Blavatsky, in her book The Key to Theosophy, Theo, in 1889, wrote, "We believe in a universal divide principle, the root of all."
That would be divine. Divide's good,
universal
too.
divine principle, the root of all, from which all proceeds, and within which all shall be at the end of the great cycle of being. Samuel Weir had taught emanation from his studies with the Cab and Gnosticism. He mapped out a complex esoteric cosmology with matter flowing from different planes of existence. Wow, so he's doing dimensional things, all existing in the absolute. As Dawson 2007 comments, as with esoteric thought in general, he holds that the universe originated in the ordering activity of the absolute upon chaotic primordial matter.
That's primordial.
Primordial matter giving rise to emanating the subsequent planes of the created form.
Order. And that's primordial, that's your pond scum.
That is the pond scum thing, but it's just like, so you just like go. It's like a wave coming at you. It gets bigger, 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 and you actually get created into something else.
Then we had the 12th century. The Theosophical doctrine of emanation was introduced by Rabbi Isaac the Blind and his pupil, Azarel ben Menachem. And in the 13th century, a second Zohar appeared. This one compiled by the Spanish Rabbi Moses de Leon, related to Ponce de Leon. After the appearance of this Zohar, the Cab teachings were taken up by the Christians, of course, the first Christian to call himself a Cab being Raymond Lully. Since that time, virtually everyone connected with the work of the Theosophical movement seems to have been a student of Hebrew philosophy, as men like Isaac Newton, Spinoza, Leibniz drew attention to the Cabs. Yes, Isaac condemned it. The number of its students steadily increased, and when Miss Blavatsky came on the scene, there were hundreds of Cab students scattered about in Europe and America, many of whom became members of the Theosophical Society.
The first three Sephiroth are purely intellectual and metaphysics. These express the absolute identity of existence and thought and form what the modern Cabs call the intelligible world. From this primordial trinity, 7 emanations issue, each emanation differing in its degree of perfection in proportion to its distance from the supreme power. And that's probably a flat earth thing. According to the Cab, matter is merely the most remote effect of its emanative energy. The story of the successive attempts to form universes, which is fully discussed in the Secret Doctrine, also appears in the Zohar. There were old worlds which perished as soon as they came into existence, were formless, and were called sparks. The sparks are the primordial worlds which could not continue because the sacred age had not yet assumed its form of king and queen, which occurred in the third race, and the master, the reincarnating ego, was not yet at work. Many Cabs have taught the Theosophical tenet that man was hermaphrodite in the early part of the third race. Some of them say that man was created with a male and a female body which were joined together at the shoulders.
I can see that.
Others say that the separation of the sexes occurred during the sleep of Adam. The Cabs also say that man is a sevenfold being, and in Mayer's Cab, a definite Hebrew name is given to each of the 7 principles, corresponding perfectly with the Sanskrit name used in the Theosophical literature.
The doctrine of reincarnation is also a Cab teaching. In the second book of Zohar, the soul pleads for freedom from rebirth, saying that she does not wish to be returned to the earth where she will again be subjected to all sorts of pollutions like this. But the soul is informed that she will be reborn even against her will.
Kind of like the show Lost. Got to go back to the island.
Yeah. In the third book of the Zohar, the fate of the soul who has broken her connection with her higher self is graphically described. All souls which have alienated themselves from the Holy One have thrown themselves into an abyss and have anticipated the time when they are to descend once more upon the earth. The cycle of rebirth with every soul under the law of karma must experience is described in the Cab under the term Gilgulim. Philo shows that the doctrine of reincarnation was accepted by the Cab Jews in the 1st century BC. The air is full of souls. Those who are nearest to earth descending to be tied to mortal bodies return to other bodies, desiring to live in them. It is quite apparent that the written Cab of the present day contains numerous theosophical teachings, but an important question arises. Is the real Cab contained in the books now known by that name?
We will leave you with that cliffhanger until next time in part 5H. Psalms 102, 18 and 19. This shall be written for the generation to come, that would be us, and the people which shall be created, chosen, shall praise Yah. For he has looked down from the height of his sanctuary, from the Shemayim, did Yahuwah behold the earth, to hear the groaning of the prisoner, to loose those that are appointed to death, to declare the name of Yahuwah in Zion, and his praise in Jerusalem. Of old have you laid the foundations of the earth and the heavens, the work of your hands. They shall perish, earth and heaven, but you will endure. Yes, all of them shall wax old like a garment, as a vesture shall you change them, and they shall be changed. But you are the same, and your years shall have no end. The children of your servants shall continue, and their seed shall be established before you.
And next time we'll be picking up on page 228 out of 500. Or it could be even higher for the next one.
Exactly. And as we will always say,
Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Yahuwah, Baruch atah Hashem Yahuwah.
Blessed is he that comes in the name of Yahuwah. And we thank you so much for hanging in there and stay with us for the cliffhanger resolution next time.
Well, that's not a cliffhanger for the end of the thing, but the cliffhanger.
Yes, can we have?
We're going through Z.
Well, a cliffhanger for the answer to that question.
Oh, that last question. It's true.
Exactly. All right, see you next time.